Welcome back to Mystery Garage. In today's episode, we finish up the supercharger and fire up this thing. Welcome back to Mystery Garage. And again, in today's episode, we work on part 2 of installing the supercharger on my Mk1 VR6 swap. So last episode we ended off at kind of having everything roughly set up. Today we're going to pull everything back off one more time, double check everything, do a little bit more cleanup. I want to tap that pan underneath. We're going to finish the full drain of the oiling system for the supercharger. We're then going to change the oil on the motor. We're going to bolt everything back in. We're going to swap the ECU out, and then we should be ready to do a first fire. So stay tuned. I got some work to do. Actually, before we go to taking everything off, I want to get this drains sorted out. So again, if you remember last time, we have this elbow here that has some possibility of slight contact issues when adjusting the supercharger belt tension. So I want to address that real quick. Last episode I showed you that I had purchased the proper AN gear to make that work. So again, I have a dash 8 3/8 Mpt fitting right here, and then we have the push lock dash 8 elbow. The issue I ran into last episode, sorry I'm trying to do this all with one hand. The issue I ran into last episode was that the overall distance, you can see where it's scratched on the top, the overall distance was actually larger than that blue setup. So what I actually did was, well, let's get this sorted out here. Anyway, you get the idea. So over here, what I did is I bought the Mpt Elbow to hopefully to shore up some space. So what I have here, now that I've got it, is you can see how much of a difference, oh sorry, I'm going the wrong way. You can see how much of a difference that makes in its travel distance. So the distance between this and this is the area in the engine compartment there that I'm losing. So by making this change to this particular style allows me to lose that great of a distance, and that'll be perfect for the setup I'm looking for. Alternatively, when I get it bolted in, I'll actually use this dash 890 again, and I'll come out of it like that to bend around that frame. So let me get to work on that, and I'll show you guys what I mean. Alright, so I got everything unbolted. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my grinder and some of my sandpaper and stuff and finish up all these edges, make them a little bit nicer. I also took the time to, while everything was quickly on, sorry, let me just see. It's hard to see, but you can see where I marked the pan. That's kind of where I want it to be. So I've fell between those two bolts, so that way it doesn't interfere with me taking the pan on or off, as well as it's a little bit to the left of the oil filter housing, so I can change the oil without having to undo that fitting. And I think it's close enough to the top of the pan, which I'll adjust it in a minute, to make sure that everything's all good. So I'm going to do some cleanup now, and then we're going to get to taking this pan off. you can see here, this is my Savage Chassis Engineering oil pan. You can see this skid plate, how it's welded on and it's super thick. I've already tested it out. You can see I've smack pan quite a few times before. The only downside is if you smack pan enough in between oil changes, sometimes this thing can come down and crush and make it hard to get the bolt out for draining your oil. But you can see here on the approaching side is where you kind of start the smack and then you finish it there. And I got that from almost from road crowning. So anyway, so switch over. You can see where I've marked it. I've since checked the engine to make sure that there's no interference on the inside of this, such as it will pick up or anything like that. Closest thing that I can see is the oil dipstick. So let's get to work on this. All right, so we got it all welded up. I'm gonna do a little bit of a cleanup after this, but I do weld it on the inside of the pan. So that way, on the outside of the pan, it's really seamless. Now, when it comes to putting this on, there we go. We just tighten that up and we got a bung. So that's the return line set up in our pan. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean the inside with a bit of a grinder to make sure I get it all nice and clean so it's smooth. And then what I'll do is I will paint it up. There we are. Okay, let's paint it up. There we are. If you consider the difference between the two, I think it's considerable. So as you can see, it's just a little cleaner. It's actually a lot cleaner. And what we're gonna do to be able to achieve that angle that this one has here, we're just gonna be able to put this right onto there. Perfect. Okay, I'll show you the inside real quick. As you can see, cleaned all that up and just put on a little lick of paint. Perfect. Okay, I got the pan all situated now. Perfect. And now going over here and we're going to take care of the swapping this fitting over to this one, and then we'll be using this, and I'll show you how that'll fit better than the previous one we had. All right, that's done. So now I think it's time to throw this back on. And what I want to show you real quick before we get too carried away here is right here. This is the bolt that I took out that was interfering with the belt. A little bit nervous about not having that there just in case it's going to start a leak. So what I did is I cleaned this up real good. That way if I'm able to see if anything does start leaking, it will, there's a dowel pin here, bolt here, bolt here. There's a couple other bolts as well, but I basically just cleaned it up to see if there's going to be a leak in the future, and I can keep my eye on that. All right, let's get the supercharger bolted on. All right, made a ton of progress off camera, so let's take a look at what I did. First of all, don't mind the big mess I made on the floor. Had a little slip up when I was doing the oil change. Anyways, so everything's bolted on. So I have the supercharger bolted on again. I have all the hoses bolted on again. A lot of this stuff I just did off camera because you guys have kind of already seen this, and I figure you guys wouldn't mind me skipping ahead a bit. So there we are, kind of everything's bolted up for good. I got the belt back on. The supercharger, everything's looking good there. Supply lines, again, down the side we see the air pipe. A couple things you didn't see before that I'll show you now. So as I showed you before, I made a change to that fitting. You can see there's, wait for it to focus, there's a ton of room now in behind that. And then I used the 90, let's see, can't really focus there. It used the 90 to go down back to the oil pan, come underneath, and you'll see the oil pan drain is right there. So I just made that hose with push lock. As you can see here too, I've installed the intake. So I was able to find a air filter that fit up there real nice. You can see kind of how it's set up. It's right next to the oil filter there, and the oil, so the air filter kind of has a little flex, and it goes into the MAF, which is hard to see, but that's this unit here is the MAF, and then it comes up the elbow and into the supercharger. So fits up real nice. I'm pretty happy with it. My old air cleaner, or my old air filter, didn't work for this setup, so I was able to find this unit, and I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out. So for anybody who might be interested in finding out down the road or might be challenged with the same problem, here's some part numbers for you. Here's the air filter that I found that worked for me. I have no idea what it's to, but it's RU2820, and the belt for no accessories, just the supercharger alternator. You're gonna find it's the 7PK1140 for the belt. So anyway, everything's pretty much hooked up. Only thing we got left to do is hop inside the car and change out the ECU. I actually mounted my ECU underneath the glove box, so you can see my right here, because my wire is kind of hidden. All of my wiring for my engine goes in through that hole there, and then it's actually underneath my glove box. So I'm going to tackle that right now, and hopefully we can turn the key pretty quick. And then up in here is my ECU. You can see it mounted up there. I have just decided to plug it in down here just to make sure everything works out. I don't really know much about this ECU. You can see it is labeled upside down there, Pt.2, so it is accurate to this swap. I just want to make sure that there's nothing really wrong with that ECU or anything, so I'm just going to leave it down rather than mounting it all the way up before I test start it. So we'll just leave it there like that, and then we'll go ahead and take one more look at the engine, double check everything, and we'll see if we can't get it fired. Okay, one more final check over. I've kind of done everything. This is all plugged in. Everything right there is all good. Supercharger, oil feeds, both on. Like I said off camera, which is obviously where I made this spill, I did change the oil, but then I accidentally knocked my jug of old oil over. But let's not talk about that. Anyway, I think we're ready to go. So I'm just going to hook up the battery real quick. Sorry guys, let's do this here. All right. Moment of truth. Okay, let me get set up. Okay, so I'm just gonna let it, I'm gonna start it, make sure it starts, and then I'm just gonna let it idle real quick, and I'm gonna do a bunch of checkovers on the engine. But, cross your fingers. Okay, everything seems to be running fine. I don't see any major leaks. The one thing I do notice is this ECU is crazy lumpy. I don't know if that's some weird miss, but I never had that on my old ECU. Seems to be maybe something with this setup. I don't know. It seems like it almost stalled out there a little bit, but maybe that it just has to learn itself. I'm not really sure. What I want to do real quick is I want to we'll put the wheels on and then we'll roll it outside and maybe we'll let it run for a little bit and see what's up. All right, we got it running. Okay, so it does appear that we got a little bit of a leak. I don't know if you can see it. Probably not, but let's see if we can't find it. Where are we here? Right there. So right there is the top of my oil filter housing. My little setup that feeds oil to the supercharger is weeping a little bit, so we'll have to get that fixed. The tune is still super lumpy, and standing behind the car, my eyes are bleeding, so it is running real rich. So it's not a bad thing. I'd rather it be running rich than lean so I don't burn anything out, but we're gonna have to take it for a drive and ease into it and see where she's at. I clipped back on my old ECU, and it's not lumpy at all, so it's got everything to do with that tune that came with that ECU. So I'll have to figure that out and see what's up there. All right, guys, that's it for today's episode. I'm filthy, garage is filthy, car is filthy, but we got a lot done and got it running. So that's the main part there. There are little issues, obviously, that we talked about. I need to figure that out, but we'll leave that for next episode. We'll button up the little issues and we'll throw the whole front side back on and we'll take it for a rip. Well, guys, that's it for this week. As I talked about, there's a couple more things we need to bolt on. Before we end up today's episode, I think we should hear a little bit more VR6 choo-choos. Till next week, guys, take care.